Honorable members, and you'll only cheer by thumping your feet, not by verbal expressions. Honorable members, I now interrupt the business of the House to allow the Cabinet Secretary to make a public pronouncement on the budget policy highlights and revenue-raising measures for the national government for the financial year 2025-2026. The Cabinet Secretary for the National Treasury and Economic Planning, Honorable FCPA John Mbandi Ngonga, AGH. You are now invited to proceed. I thank you, members. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and honorable members of the National Assembly. I want to thank you, Mr. Speaker, for granting me this opportunity to read budget highlights and revenue-raising measures for 2025-2026. Mr. Speaker, it is with great honor and privilege that I present to this esteemed House and the people of Kenya the budget statement for the financial year 2025-2026 budget. I make this statement in compliance with Section 40 of the Public Finance Management Act, Cap 412A, and the Standing Order number 241 of the National Assembly. Mr. Speaker, these legal provisions give life to the building constitutional requirements of good governance to which the President and certainly the National Treasury and Economic Planning remain fully committed to. Mr. Speaker, at the outset, allow me to express my sincere gratitude to His Excellency, Honorable Dr. William Samoei Ruto, the President of the Republic of Kenya and Commander-in-Chief of the Defense Forces, for the trust he bestowed upon me by appointing me as the Cabinet Secretary for the National Treasury and Economic to provide leadership in economic and financial affairs of our country. I remain mindful of the aspirations and high expectations of the Kenyan people as I serve in this office. The Constitution protects realization of economic, social, and cultural rights, which includes the rights to adequate food, to adequate housing, to education, right to health, to social security, and to take part in cultural life, to water and sanitation, and also right to work. This budget, Mr. Speaker, speaks to these rights and reaffirms the priority policies and strategies aimed at stimulating economic recovery articulated in the bottom-up economic transformation agenda, otherwise known as BETTER, while highlighting the achievements over the past 2.5 years in enhancing the livelihoods of Kenyans. At its core, BETTER has adopted a value chain approach focusing on strategic investment in areas that generate the highest impact, particularly in job creation and income generation at the grassroots level. Mr. Speaker, significant successes have been achieved through targeted intervention and structural reforms. These measures have laid a solid foundation for economic recovery and set us on a path towards long-term growth and stability. Mr. Speaker, let me mention just a few achievements under BETTER. First, the Kenyan economy has remained resilient and registered an average growth of 5.2% for the period between 2023 and 2024, outpacing both global growth of 3.3% and 3.8% for the sub-Saharan African region over the same period. Second, the government has rolled out fertilizer and seed subsidies to farmers across the country, and that has boosted production in key food value chains and revived underperforming or collapsed export crops such as pyrethrum. Since February 2024, Mr. Speaker, a total of 6.5 million registered farmers have benefited from the fertilizer subsidy program. And as a result of these initiatives, the cost of fertilizer has declined
by 67%, from Kenya shillings 7,500 in 2022 to 2,500 in 2025. While maize production has increased by 38.9%, from 61.7 million bags in 2022 to 85.7 million bags in 2024. This is a clear demonstration of the positive impact of our agricultural reforms towards food security and improved household income. Third, to support livelihoods and small businesses, the government has disbursed loans amounting to over 75 billion by the end of May 2025 through the Financial Inclusion Fund, popularly known as the Hustler Fund. This initiative has provided access to affordable credit to over 26 million customers with a strong base of 9 million repeat borrowers and a repayment rate of 79%. A total of 4.5 million borrowers are eligible to be graduated to the mainstream financing institutions. And to build a culture of savings for the future, the fund has also successfully mobilized 4.5 billion in savings from its beneficiaries. Fourth, to enhance the attainment of universal health coverage, the government has expanded social health insurance. And as of May 2025, more than 22 million Kenyans were registered with the Social Health Authority, what we call SHA, representing a remarkable 175% increase in membership compared to the 8 million previously enrolled under the defunct National Hospital Insurance Fund, NHIF. This marks a major milestone, Mr. Speaker, in our health sector reforms and brings us closer to our goal of equitable, affordable, and accessible health care for all. Fifth, in fulfillment of the commitment to deepen home ownership and close the housing gap, the government has facilitated the construction of affordable housing units across the country. Since September 2022, 2,379 affordable housing units have been completed across 4 counties, with another 11,000 units in the last stages of completion. The units have been advertised for sale to the public through the Boma Yangu platform. And in addition, there are 148,465 units under active construction across the remaining 43 counties. As part of the program, the government is also supporting the development of institutional housing for the uniformed services and students. Mr. Speaker and honorable members, these efforts have created over 250,000 direct and indirect jobs for Kenyans. In addition, over 11 billion has been ring-fenced for Juakali and MSMEs to support local fabrication of steel doors, windows, and other construction materials. Sixth, to drive digital transformation and inclusion, the government has expanded last-mile fiber optic connectivity to 13,590 kilometers in 2025, up from 8,900 kilometers in 2022, an increase of 53%. Two, established 285 digital hubs across the country, and also increased the number of digitized government services from 350 in 2022 to 20,985 in 2025 through integration with the e-citizen and mobile platforms, ensuring seamless access for all Kenyans. Seventh, to promote access to reliable and competitive energy, the government has expanded energy generation by installing an additional 167 megawatts of electricity from 3,076 megawatts in 2022 to 3,243 megawatts in 2025. This has enabled connection of 932,839 more customers to electricity. The system peak has increased from 2,149 megawatts of electricity in July 2022 to 2,316 megawatts of electricity in February 2025. The total number of customers connected to electricity has increased to 10 million in 2025 from 8.9 million in 2022. Eighth, to boost education and training outcomes in the country as a tool of creating equality in the society, the government has invested significant resources and implemented radical changes in the education sector. And these include resolving the uncertainty around the competency-based curriculum, CBC, launching of the Kenya Education Management Information System to consolidate all existing student registers from early childhood development to institutions of higher learning into a single centralized database. And 3, rolling out of a new student-focused higher education focusing model with special emphasis for students from vulnerable families. Additionally, in order to improve the teacher-student ratio, the government has recruited 76,000 teachers, including junior secondary school teachers. 9th, to enhance domestic and regional connectivity, boost rural productivity, improve urban informal settlements, and reduce urban congestion, this government has constructed an additional 1,574 kilometers of roads and 129 bridges from 2022 to April 30th, 2025. Further, the government has rehabilitated an additional 212 kilometers of roads and periodically maintains 126,177 kilometers of roads. 10th, the government has also made significant progress in expanding social protection through the Inooro Jamii Cash Transfer Program. From 2022 to 2025, the number of households with orphans and vulnerable children receiving support has increased by 65% to 428,421. Additionally, persons living with disabilities registered for support grew by 34% to 59,637. The number of senior citizens aged 70 years and above registered for social protection also rose by 66% to over 1.2 million. These efforts have provided stable incomes to the beneficiaries and reduced their dependency on relatives, enhancing their dignity and quality of life. Mr. Speaker and honorable members, notwithstanding these achievements, we are aware that a lot remains to be done in order to address the pressing challenges facing Kenyans. And Mr. Speaker, in this year's budget-making process, we accorded Kenyans an opportunity to share their views on how to address the economic challenges facing our country. In my various engagements at open barazas and in the media, Kenyans have been very resolute in voicing their concerns that include overtaxation and high cost of living, unemployment, need for protection of the poor and vulnerable, and more importantly, the need to reduce government expenditure and wastage of resources across the national and county governments. Mr. Speaker, I am alive to these domestic challenges facing Kenyans and the external factors such as geopolitical tensions and shifting global trade dynamics that lead to escalation of the cost of essential commodities in the country, requiring comprehensive responses by government. As you may recall, the social unrest precipitated by the Finance Bill of 2024 brought to the fore the importance of values and principles of governance as enshrined in our Constitution. In response and to win public trust, we have strengthened public participation in all policy formulation, including budget-making process. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, I have actively engaged Kenyans in various social forums in an effort to promote inclusive dialogue on the challenges facing our economy. And as a result of these consultations, we have focused on the following broad areas. First, easing tax burden on Kenyans by increasing the pool of taxpayers and enhancing tax compliance. In this respect, the ongoing work on the digitization and automation of the Kenya Revenue Authority, in line with the Kenya's medium-term revenue strategy. Thus, all who are able shall henceforth contribute to financing the operations of government and development of our country. Second, to enhance liquidity in the economy and support small businesses, we have started the process of settling pending bills that have been validated, particularly those related to road construction, which has resulted in resumption of road construction projects across the country. Mr. Speaker, the pending bills verification committee will share their final report by the end of June 2025. This report will be analyzed and recommendations tabled in Cabinet for approval, after which we shall embark on the process of clearing the eligible bills, starting with those related to individuals, businesses, and the micro, small, and medium enterprises, majority of whom have borne the brunt of non-payment. Third, promotion of good governance on public finance matters. Mr. Speaker, Kenyans have expressed concerns about the public debt. Indeed, there is a perception of lack of transparency in the management of public debt. In this regard, I requested the Auditor General to conduct a comprehensive audit of public debt. This audit is currently ongoing, and once completed, the report will be shared with this House. Fourth, there has been public perception and concerns in the past that our budgets tend to be unrealistic. To address these concerns, we took a two-pronged approach. First, we adopted the zero-based budgeting, where every budget item has to be justified at the beginning of every financial year. This process was used in the preparation of the financial year 2025-2026 budget, which is the first time it is used, and which budget I submitted to this House on the 30th of April 2025. Second, in response to concerns on unrealistic revenue projections, we have reduced revenue projection to be in line with the trends. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, revenue projections in the financial year 2025-26 budget and over the medium term are consistent with the growth of the economy. Fifth, Mr. Speaker, in order to improve governance in the public procurement process, I launched the e-procurement system on April 7, 2025. And beginning of 1st July 2025, all procurement by ministries, departments, and agencies will be done through the e-procurement system without any exception. This will reduce the opaqueness and save government resources, estimated at 10% of procurable budgets. Sixth, we have taken deliberate efforts to enhance transparency and promote inclusive policy making and deepen public understanding of government economic priorities. We have not only intensified media engagement through the TV stations and radios, but have also engaged the public in open places like Jivanji Garden, Bunge la Mwananchi, and Mombasa County, where we held a meeting at Swahili Port Amphitheater. Similar engagements have also taken place in other locations in Nairobi, Mombasa, Eldoret, and Nyeri, thereby providing valuable insights and lessons which have been taken into consideration while preparing this budget. Seventh, Mr. Speaker, in order to create additional jobs for the youth, the government has begun rolling out Climate Works, a nationwide program that will engage over 110,000 youth across all 47 counties. The program started last year in Nairobi's informal settlements and has been a great success. Now it is being expanded to the rest of the country. Climate Works is designed as a social support program that gives young people paid work to improve their communities. The youth will help build roads, plant trees, and clean up the environment in their neighborhoods. Thus, through this climate work, the government is not only providing a paycheck to help young people meet their immediate needs, but also offering financial support to help them develop themselves and their families. Indeed, the program enables them to save money and prepare for their next steps, including starting businesses, continuing their education, or finding long-term jobs. I encourage all our youth to register ahead of the registration deadline. Today, Mr. Speaker, having heard Kenyans loud and clear, we have accommodated their diverse concerns in the financial year 2025-2026 budget. And in this regard, this budget provides highlights of the measures the government has taken to stimulate economic recovery, strengthen macroeconomic stability, and enhance resilience of our economy. Mr. Speaker, achieving these strategic objectives will require that we pull in the same direction. It is in this context that His Excellency the President has urged us to put our differences aside, build bridges, and focus on implementation of strategic interventions for a better Kenya. Mr. Speaker, in this respect, the theme for this year's budget is stimulating sustainable economic recovery for improved livelihoods, job creation, and business and industrial prosperity in line with better. That is bottom-up economic transformation agenda. That is the theme. Mr. Speaker, as we move forward in the implementation of the government's agenda, we are also conscious of the fiscal constraints that demand our collective attention and thoughtful action. 1, rising demands for increased public spending, which could lead to either higher debt or the need to raise taxes, both of which require careful consideration and balanced decision-making given current public concerns. 2, we face constraints on account of public debt accumulation. Progressively, our debt carrying capacity has narrowed. This calls for prudence and discipline on how we manage and take on new debt. And finally, we face the challenges of mobilizing higher tax revenues as we must balance the need for increased revenues with the need to keep the cost of doing business low to stimulate economic growth. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, these constraints are interlinked, and addressing them effectively requires strategic planning, fiscal discipline, and a commitment to long-term sustainability. In this regard, this budget will continue to implement a fiscal consolidation plan designed towards slowing down the growth of public debt while protecting service delivery to our citizens. Given the limited resources we have made tough choices by curtailing funding to lower priority areas. This has allowed us to redirect our scarce resources towards the better core pillars and enablers, accelerating outcomes for citizens while maintaining pro-poor spending in health, education, and vulnerable groups. Mr. Speaker, the rest of my statement will present the economic context around which this budget is prepared, policy priorities and structural reforms under better, the proposed resource allocations as well as revenue-raising measures that the government will implement in the financial year 2025-2026 budget. And therefore, let me start with the economic policy context. And I will first speak to the global context. Mr. Speaker, 2025-2026 budget has been prepared in the context of heightened uncertainty due to recent tariff wars and the intensification of geopolitical tensions, which continue to pose significant risks to global economies. In this regard and respect, global economic growth is expected to slow from 3.3% in 2024 to 2.8% in 2025, and finally to 3% in 2026. Now, let me come to the domestic economy. Mr. Speaker and honorable members, on the domestic front, the economy has remained resilient, as I stated earlier, recording an average growth rate of 5.2% for the years 2023 and 2024. This performance is higher than the global average of 3.3% and also higher than the sub-Saharan African region average of 3.8% over the same period. This strong growth reflects the impact of sound and deliberate policies as well as the resilience of our well-diversified economy. These factors have enabled us to withstand significant domestic and external shocks while maintaining a steady path of progress. In 2024, the economy grew by 4.7%, supported by positive growth in all sectors except construction and mining. This growth was lower compared to 5.7% in 2023, mainly due to adverse effects of floods in the second quarter and the anti-finance bill protests in the third quarter of 2024 that disrupted economic activities. In fact, our economy closed down for about 3 months. Mr. Speaker, the government's policy interventions have strengthened the macroeconomic indicators as reflected in the following achievements. Number one, inflation rates has declined to 3.8% in May 2025 from a peak of 9.6% in October 2022. The prices of essential food items, including sugar, milk, maize flour, wheat flour, bread, and rice, among others, have eased. For example, the price of 2 kilograms of sifted maize flour has declined to 156.9 shillings in May 2025 from Kenya shillings 177.7 in October 2022. Similarly, cost of energy and power has also come down over the same period. Second, in response to the decline in inflation, the Central Bank of Kenya has gradually eased monetary policy, lowering the central bank rate from 13% in August 2024 to 9.75% in June 2025. With the easing of monetary policy stance, interest rates have been declining. For example, the 91-day Treasury bills rates have declined from an average of 15.9% in May 2024 to 8.3% by May 2025. In addition, the average commercial bank lending rates that peaked at 17.2% in November 2024 have since declined to 15.7% in April 2025 and are expected to decline further. This decline has not only reduced the cost on government debt, but is also expected to stimulate lending by banks to the private sector and support economic activity. And third, foreign exchange market has remained stable, supported by a narrowing in the current account deficit and improved investor sentiment and confidence in our economy. The current account deficit narrowed to an all-time low at 1.3% of GDP in 2024 from 2.5% of GDP in 2023, supported by export of goods, resilient tourism, and remittance inflows, and a contraction in food imports. As a result, our foreign exchange reserves have increased to their highest levels and stood at US dollars 10.5 billion, which is equivalent to 4.7 months of import cover by 30th of May 2025, and continue to provide adequate cover and a buffer against any short-term shocks in the foreign exchange market. The exchange rate against the US dollar has also appreciated from 159.7 to the dollar in January 2024 to stabilize at Kenya shillings 129.3 shillings to the dollar by 30th of May 2025. Mr. Speaker, the economy is expected to sustain growth momentum in 2025 and 2026, with the growth projected at 5.3% per year. And Mr. Speaker, this growth outlook is premised on a stable macroeconomic environment over the medium term. To foster macroeconomic stability, the government will continue to uphold prudent monetary and fiscal policies, ensuring that our actions remain aligned with the evolving needs of the economy and of the Kenyan people. As part of the process, the government will work to ensure that inflation remains within the targeted range, maintain a competitive exchange rate to the dollar, and deliver stable interest rates. Fiscal policy stance over the medium term will continue to support the government's priority programs under BETTER through a growth-oriented fiscal consolidation path. And as such, the fiscal deficit is projected to decline from 5.3% of GDP in the financial year 2023-24 to 2.7% of GDP in the financial year 2028-2029. Mr. Speaker, Kenya's economic outlook faces both external and domestic risks. Globally, trade tensions, financial market volatility, and geopolitical conflicts could reduce Kenya's exports, tourism, and remittances, as well as raise costs of essential commodities. In the domestic scene, extreme weather may impact agriculture, infrastructure, and food security. The government is monitoring these risks closely and will take necessary action and measures to safeguard macroeconomic stability. Mr. Speaker and honorable members, let me now expound on the policy, priorities, and structural reforms that the government is implementing to sustain economic growth and improve livelihood of Kenyans. The priorities are under the bottom-up economic transformation agenda. Mr. Speaker, as I have already affirmed earlier in my statement, government's initiatives under Better over the last 2.5 years have resulted in significant successes, notwithstanding a challenging domestic and external landscape. Over the medium term, the government will consolidate the gains already realized to stimulate sustainable economic recovery for improved livelihoods. Towards this end, the government will continue to implement policies, programs, projects, and the interventions geared towards 1. Bringing further down the cost of living, 2. Ensuring food security, 3. Creating jobs, 4. Expanding the tax base, 5. Improving foreign exchange balances, and finally, fostering inclusive growth. Priority will be given to attracting strategic investment across Better's 5 core pillars and their enablers, using a value chain approach to enhance production and add value and improve market access. This will be supported by a whole-of-government approach to service delivery. Mr. Speaker, the government will also implement the following interventions to support and accelerate economic recovery. First, continue to uphold macroeconomic stability and strengthen security to ensure a safe and supportive business environment. Second, accelerate the development of key infrastructure, including roads, railway, energy, and water systems to lower the cost of doing business and ease the movement of the people and goods. Third, boost investment in key economic sectors to drive broad-based, sustainable growth by advancing agricultural transformation, strengthening manufacturing, promoting environmental conservation and climate change mitigation, revitalizing tourism, and ensuring sustainable land use and management. Fourth, strengthen human capital development by increasing investment in health, education, and targeted social safety nets for vulnerable populations to achieve both social and economic outcomes. Fifth, promote empowerment of youth, women, and persons living with disability through government-funded programs complemented by strategic partnerships with private sector organizations. Sixth, facilitate fiscal decentralization by allocating shareable revenues to governments
shareable revenues to county governments to bolster institutional capacity and improve service delivery. And finally and lastly, undertake policy, legal and institutional reforms to improve efficiency and effectiveness in public service delivery. I want to now turn to a presentation on building resilience against climate change. Here, Mr. Speaker and honorable members, climate change, we all know, is now a global crisis. And Kenya remains vulnerable to the impacts of climate change, which pose both economic and fiscal risks. In response, the government is taking proactive steps to align with the global transition towards a low-carbon, climate-resilient future. To address the challenges and opportunities in climate finance and investment, the government has developed a number of frameworks, including climate finance mobilization strategy, national policy framework on green fiscal incentives, carbon market framework, as well as the national green taxonomy. To diversify our financing sources, address budget deficits, and fund social and environmental sustainability projects, the government is developing a sustainability-linked bond framework that will allow the issuance of a bond. We reaffirm our dedication to protecting our environment, safeguarding livelihoods, and building a climate-resilient Kenya for current and future generations. Mr. Speaker, as a country, we continue to experience challenges of disaster occurrences, mainly due to weather variability and climate change. These pose significant fiscal disruptions, while at the same time affecting lives and livelihoods of millions of Kenyans. Mr. Speaker, in order to have a financing framework to manage disaster risks, the government is finalizing the development of the Public Finance Management Disaster Risk Management Fund regulations of 2025. The regulations seek to establish a dedicated fund for addressing 4 cycles of disaster risk management, namely preparedness, mitigation, response, and recovery. Allow me now to turn to policy and legal institutional reforms. Mr. Speaker, recognizing that sustainable economic recovery depends on the timely implementation of effective policy, legal, and institutional reforms, the government is implementing the following interventions to enhance the business environment, improve efficiency in public service delivery, and bolster accountability and transparency in the management of public finances. Number 1, public procurement reforms. Mr. Speaker, to streamline public procurement, we developed the Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Amendment Bill of 2024, which is currently in Parliament for enactment. The bill seeks to enhance transparency and accountability, strengthen the role of the regulator to enforce standards, compliance, and sanctions for non-compliant procuring entities, promote the use of local content, and align with international best practices. I urge the honorable members to fast-track this enactment. Its enactment. Mr. Speaker, in order to fully automate public procurement and asset disposal processes, I launched the end-to-end e-government procurement system in April 2025. The e-government procurement system is a complete departure from the manual processes, and will lead to increased bidder participation, enhanced efficiency in processing of procurement requests, and increased authenticity of procurement documents through integration with various government systems. Mr. Speaker, the rollout of the e-procurement system is scheduled for July 2025. In order to ensure effective use of this system, the National Treasury rolled out the training of end users from procuring entities in both the national and county governments on the e-government procurement system phase 1 modules that cover procurement planning to contract management. We have since trained suppliers, and to date, 400 e-government procurement system end users comprising public finance management staff and suppliers from both the national and county governments have been trained in readiness for full rollout in July 2025. Next, I want to speak to restraining growth of public sector wage bill, which has been of serious concern. Mr. Speaker, the government continues to implement measures aimed at reducing the ratio of the government wage bill as a share of tax revenue, with a view to free much-needed resources for priority social and development spending. The government will implement the following initiatives to control the wage bill. First, the government will fully implement the unified human resource management system across all public sector entities by July 2025. This initiative is part of broader efforts to enhance public sector efficiency, improve management of wage bill, and ensure the effective utilization of public funds. Second, the Salaries and Remuneration Commission continues to sustainably reduce the number of allowances in public service through a phased approach aimed at streamlining allowances to improve transparency, accountability, equity, and fairness, thereby ensuring total public compensation bill is affordable and fiscally sustainable. To this end, the Salaries and Remuneration Commission will progressively review allowances and benefits in the future collective bargaining agreements, aligning them to the allowances policy guidelines for the public service. Allow me now to turn to state corporations reforms. Mr. Speaker and honorable members, state corporations are a major source of fiscal risks to public finances due to management and operational inefficiencies. An assessment conducted by the National Treasury to determine viability of state corporations identified critical gaps and vulnerabilities. Mr. Speaker, to address the vulnerabilities, the Cabinet in January 2025 approved reforms to streamline state corporations and enhance governance and accountability of the corporations. The reforms target to address operational and financial inefficiencies, enhance service delivery, and reduce over-reliance on exchequer support by state corporations. The approved reforms include the following. First, merger of 42 state corporations into 20 entities to improve operational efficiency and eliminate redundancy, as some have duplicating and or overlapping mandates. Second, dissolution of 25 state corporations and their functions transferred back to their parent ministries or other state corporations. Third, restructuring 6 state corporations to align their mandates for improved performances. Fourth, declassification of 4 public funds currently categorized as state corporations and transferring their functions back to the relevant ministries. And fifth, declassification of 13 professional bodies currently categorized as state corporations to private entities with no exchequer budget. Mr. Speaker, thank you. Mr. Speaker, in order to enhance operational efficiency, improve governance and ownership of state corporations, the government developed the Government-Owned Enterprises Bill of 2024. The bill is part of broader efforts by the government to streamline public enterprises, reduce fiscal risks, and enhance service delivery to citizens. The bill is currently before this August House for consideration. Thank you. I urge honorable members to favorably consider the bill to enable its enactment. Mr. Speaker, in order to secure the uptake of cotton production, while also providing alternative linked supplies for local apparel manufacturers, the Cabinet approved the revival and commercialization of Rivertex East Africa Limited, by onboarding non-equity strategic partners. Mr. Speaker, on sugar sector reforms, His Excellency the President reaffirmed his commitment during this year's Madaraka Day celebrations to ensure the prompt payment of sugarcane farmers. The government has also taken practical steps to deliver its promise to modernize the mills and transform these once struggling factories into productive, sustainable enterprises. Currently, 4 state-owned sugar factories, Chemelil's Sugar Company, Muhoroni's Sugar Company, Nzoia's Sugar Company, and South Nyanza Sugar Company, which is also known as Sony, have been placed under competitive leasing arrangements. This initiative is expected to enhance efficiency, restore profitability, and protect the livelihoods of farmers. Let me now turn to pending bills. Mr. Speaker, the government remains committed to resolving the long-standing issues of pending bills dating back to 2005 as part of broader efforts to strengthen public financial management and restore confidence in government processes. In this respect, the Pending Bills Verification Committee that was appointed in September 2023 is currently finalizing its report for submission by end of this month. Since its inauguration, the committee received a total of 65,625 pending bills claims valued at over 571.6 billion. The committee has analyzed 57% of the bills received valued at 522 billion. The 57% is in terms of numbers. Out of this, a total of 229 billion has been recommended for settlement. Once the committee submits its report, we shall submit the recommendations to Cabinet for approval to settle the pending bills. Let me now speak to national assets and inventory management reforms. Mr. Speaker, in order to promote prudent management of public assets and liabilities, the National Treasury digitized assets in the assets and inventory management modules in the IFMIS for use by both national government and county governments. Already, 52 state departments have gone live on the IFMIS asset module and are at various stages of uploading their registers for 6 asset categories, namely land, building, motor vehicles, ICT equipment, office equipment, and furniture and fittings. In addition, a roadmap is in place to roll out the module to the county government, and this reform will enable accounting officers have visibility of all assets and inventory under their control and facilitate optimal assets utilization. Mr. Speaker and honorable members, to enhance the management and utilization of public assets, the government is developing a policy on public sector asset valuation. The policy will support accurate financial reporting, strengthen fiscal discipline, and inform evidence-based public investment decisions. In addition, the government will develop framework to facilitate identification of public sector assets, and this will ensure accuracy and completeness of assets register, which are critical for transition to accrual basis of accounting. On financial sector reforms, Mr. Speaker, the banking sector has remained stable and resilient with a strong asset base, which grew by 1.5% from 7.6 trillion in April 2024 to 7.7 trillion in April 2025. To anchor the banking sector to continue playing its role in Kenya's socio-economic transformation, various reforms have been implemented, which include, first, the Central Bank of Kenya lifted the moratorium on licensing of new commercial banks in Kenya in April 2025. This is expected to attract foreign direct investment in the sector, resulting in competition and consequently reduced lending rates. Second, to promote the greening of banking sector, Central Bank of Kenya in April 2025 issued the Kenya Green Finance Taxonomy and the Climate Risk Disclosure Framework for implementation by the sector. The Kenya Green Finance Taxonomy is a tool to classify whether particular economic activities are green or environmentally sustainable and promote the transition to a low carbon economy. The Climate Risk Disclosure Framework is aimed at enabling banks to integrate climate-related risks into their governance, strategy, risk management, and disclosure frameworks. It is also intended to enable banks to leverage on business opportunities from efforts to mitigate and adapt to climate change. And third, issuance of guidelines on global liquidity standards and leverage ratios. The Central Bank of Kenya in April 2025 issued guidelines on liquidity coverage ratio, net stable funding ratio, and leverage ratio for the banking sector. These guidelines will enhance the banking sector's liquidity and capital framework
for funding and manage their risk profiles effectively. Mr. Speaker, the Central Bank of Kenya, in collaboration with the National Treasury and other stakeholders, are developing the National Financial Inclusion Strategy for the period covering 2025 to 2028. The strategy provides a consolidated framework for advancing financial inclusion agenda to meet the needs of all Kenyans through deepening access and usage of financial services, enhancing quality of affordable financial products that meet consumer demands. Mr. Speaker, to strengthen digital finance in Kenya, the government will continue to implement the National Payment Strategy for the period 2022 to 2025 and fast-track finalization of a national policy on digital finance. In order to reform and modernize the national payment system, Central Bank of Kenya is doing the following. 1. Undertaking a comprehensive review of the national payment system legal and regulatory framework. 2. Implementing a fast payment system that seeks to address persistent challenges in interoperability, affordability, and the high cost of digital transaction. And third, effective 1st July 2025, the Kenya Electronic Payment and Settlement System will transition to a 24/7 settlement capability. This will support round-the-clock trade, enable faster clearing of government payments, facilitate real-time business-to-business transactions, and provide greater flexibility for consumers and financial institutions. Mr. Speaker, following the grey listing of the Republic of Kenya by the Financial Action Task Force in February 2024, the government has continuously addressed the technical deficiencies identified in Kenya's Mutual Evaluation Report, which was published by Eastern and Southern Africa Anti-Money Laundering Group in September 2024. Mr. Speaker, as you are aware, one of the technical deficiencies identified in the Kenya's Mutual Evaluation Report was lack of a policy and regulatory framework to the virtual assets and virtual assets service providers. In order to regulate this sector, the government has developed the Virtual Asset Service Providers Bill 2025, which is currently before Parliament. Again, I urge honorable members to fast-track its enactment. On capital markets development, to further deepen the capital markets, the government continues to review the legal and regulatory framework to address emerging issues in the sector. In particular, the government overhauled the public officer regulations and collective investment schemes regulations to spur uptake of products while ensuring that investors are protected. The government has also approved new regulatory frameworks to support credit ratings and alternative investment funds, which have attracted a lot of interest from investors. Further, the government is in the process of reviewing the regulatory frameworks for licensing, margin trading, conduct of business for market intermediaries, and mergers, acquisitions, and takeovers. Once in place, these regulations will reinvigorate capital markets activity and make our capital markets more facilitative and efficient. Mr. Speaker, to diversify the government sources of financing, a Sukuk bond has been issued while other Sharia-compliant products are in the pipeline. The first Sukuk bond raised 3.2 billion, which has been effectively deployed in the affordable housing program and pension reforms. Mr. Speaker, in the Tax Laws Act, Mr. Speaker, now I turn to the pension reforms. Mr. Speaker, in the Tax Laws Amendment Act 2024, we introduced a number of incentives aimed at increasing disposable income to our senior citizens once they retire. And I thank this Honorable House for passing this Tax Laws Amendment Bill in December. We, among others, increased tax deductible amount, removed tax on all retirement benefits, and introduced tax exemption on pension savings towards post-retirement medical schemes. Mr. Speaker, despite the reforms introduced in this sector, benefit adequacy remains a persistent challenge. Many retirees still find their pensions insufficient to meet their basic needs. And Mr. Speaker, the retirement benefits system predominantly covers the working population in the public and private sector to the exclusion of the unemployed population, who are majority in the informal sector. To address this, the National Treasury, in collaboration with key stakeholders, is implementing the National Retirement Benefits Policy. This policy outlines a clear, forward-looking strategy to address long-standing structural challenges, such as fragmented legal frameworks, exclusion of informal sector workers, limited medical cover for the elderly, weak portability mechanisms, and inadequate dispute resolution structures. Mr. Speaker, the government remains committed to fulfilling its obligations to retired public servants while ensuring that our pension systems is modern, inclusive, efficient, and sustainable. In this respect, the government is undertaking reforms aimed at delivering faster, more transparent, and citizen-friendly pension services. Key among these reforms is the re-engineering of the pension management information system, which, together with the launch of a pension self-registration platform, will significantly improve data accuracy, enhance biometric verification, and reduce pension processing time from several months to less than 30 days. These reforms will also ensure real-time claims tracking and integration with the national identification and payroll system, reducing errors and potential leakages. The re-engineered pension management system is planned for rollout on 1st of July 2025 and will transform pension administration by 1. Enabling ministries, departments, and agencies to submit pension claims online at source through integration with government human resource systems. 2. Allowing pensioners and beneficiaries to access services remotely and track the status of their claims in real time. And 3. Providing automated updates to clients on the progress of their claims through system-generated notifications. On insurance reforms, Mr. Speaker, to facilitate the growth of the insurance industry in Kenya, the government will speed up the approval of the National Insurance Policy and its implementation. The policy will guide the review of the Insurance Act, which has served its purpose, albeit with progressive amendments for the last 30 years. Mr. Speaker, the Insurance Regulatory Authority is undertaking focused training on livestock and crop insurance, targeting farmers and pastoralist communities. These efforts are aimed at improving understanding and access to agricultural insurance as a tool for mitigating climate-related risks and protecting livelihoods of farmers and pastoralist communities. The authority is also conducting a comprehensive money laundering and terrorist financing risk assessment on the vulnerability of the insurance industry. This will aid in the identification of areas of improvement so as to strengthen the supervisory framework. On reforms under the education sector, Mr. Speaker, the National Treasury is committed to upholding the right to education, including free and compulsory basic education as guaranteed under Article 53B of the Constitution of Kenya. While we are cognizant that examinations must be conducted as scheduled later this year, there is need to undertake a critical evaluation of the costing of examinations, assess the sustainability of the program in view of the prevailing fiscal constraints, and explore optimal options for delivering national examinations in order to ensure economy and value for money in public spending. Mr. Speaker, a key consideration is the merits of public funding of examination fees for all primary and secondary school candidates, including those from well-off households, as opposed to targeting the vulnerable students in our schools. We should also explore options of making the exercise of delivering national examinations simple and affordable without compromising the credibility of the exercise. To this end, the National Treasury is in consultations with the Ministry of Education on how best to achieve this at a minimal cost possible, including evaluating possible cost-sharing mechanisms. Mr. Speaker, the government remains committed to ensuring access to quality education for all children. In this regard, I assure the public and the 2025 examination candidates of our commitment to provide adequate funding for 2025 national examinations. On the fiscal policy framework, Mr. Speaker, the implementation of 2024-2025 budget has faced notable challenges, primarily following the withdrawal of the Finance Bill of 2024. Its withdrawal, alongside the associated public demonstrations, adversely affected economic activity and disrupted business operations across the country, compounding the fiscal pressures facing the government already. In response, the government undertook a revision of the fiscal framework through Supplementary Expense Number 1 in August 2024. This revision reflected a lower revenue base following the preliminary outcomes of financial year 2023-24, while also addressing immediate cash flow constraints. These adjustments were critical to ensuring the continuity of public service delivery. Mr. Speaker, in addition to the mid-year economic disruptions, the budget execution has been further constrained by shortfalls in revenue and emerging expenditure pressures. Notably, the implementation of the collective bargaining agreements and funding requirements under the new university education financing model have placed significant demands on the available fiscal space. These challenges have led to cash flow pressures and a buildup of pending obligations, necessitating careful fiscal management and reprioritization. To address these evolving dynamics, the government prepared supplementary budget estimates to accommodate revenue shortfalls experienced during the current fiscal year and accommodated expenditure pressures. On domestic revenue mobilization, Mr. Speaker, in order to support our economic agenda and sustain key government programs, the government continues to implement a balanced mix of tax policy and administrative measures aimed at significantly boosting revenue collection. As part of the process, the government is focused on broadening the tax base while reducing the burden of compliance. In this regard, we have prioritized sectors such as the digital economy, agribusiness, and small and medium enterprises in tax, education, and outreach programs. In addition, Mr. Speaker, Kenya Revenue Authority continues to embrace modern technology to streamline tax processes, facilitate trade, and enhance voluntary compliance. A key milestone in this journey is the launch of Gava Connect, an open application programming interface platform that enables Kenyan developers to build homegrown solutions for efficient access to tax services. This program enhances service delivery, improves transparency, and strengthens our ability to detect tax evasion. Mr. Speaker, Kenya Revenue Authority has also introduced several digital tools to simplify compliance and boost operational efficiency. One is what we call auto-populated VAT returns for seamless, accurate tax filing. Two, simplified pay returns, accessible via mobile, web, and application program interface. Three, electronic rental income tax system that has enabled transparent rental income declarations. And four, forecourt electronic tax invoice management system integration in the petroleum sector, connecting fuel dispensers to point-of-sale terminals. This enables real-time transmission of sales data to electronic tax invoice management system, simplifying compliance and ensuring greater transparency in fuel transactions. Mr. Speaker, these solutions are more than just tech updates. They are the drivers of economic empowerment and accountability. Indeed, by simplifying tax procedures, developing user-friendly digital platforms, and providing on-the-ground support, Kenya Revenue Authority is nurturing a fair and inclusive tax culture, one that enables businesses to thrive while meeting their obligations. Mr. Speaker, building on the progress made, our focus in the financial year 2025-26 and over the medium term will be to strengthen domestic resource mobilization through the following key initiatives. First, continue with the implementation of the national tax policy and the medium-term revenue strategy to provide a consistent and predictable framework for tax administration and policy formulation. Second, continue with the automation of tax administration processes to improve the overall efficiency of the tax system. And third, enhancing non-tax revenue collection by enabling ministries, departments, and agencies to generate income through the services they provide to the public. Mr. Speaker, as part of our broader fiscal reform agenda, the government is undertaking targeted tax administrative reforms aimed at strengthening our revenue base and promoting inclusive economic growth. These reforms will focus on three key objectives. First, reducing tax expenditures. Mr. Speaker, tax expenditures stood at 3.38% of GDP in 2023. To unlock additional revenue for national governments, we must reduce that tax expenditure. Second, expanding the tax base and enhancing compliance, in line with the goals set out in the medium-term revenue strategy. And third, streamlining the tax structure to encourage domestic production, attract investment, and stimulate economic growth. Mr. Speaker, allow me to speak to improving efficiency of public expenditure. Here, Mr. Speaker, in our continued effort to ensure prudent fiscal management, the government will sustain and deepen measures aimed at strengthening expenditure control and enhancing the efficiency and effectiveness of public spending. To this end, the government will implement a series of targeted actions, which include: 1, utilization of the launched end-to-end procurement system to maximize value for money, enhance efficiency and transparency in public procurement processes. 2, rolling out of a human resource management system across all national government ministries and departments, as well as county governments, to support better management of the public wage bill. 3, scaling up the use of the public-private partnerships framework for commercially viable projects to attract private sector participation in public service delivery, what we call PPP. 4, improving the public service pension administration through rolling out the pension management information system. And 5, fast-tracking governance reforms in state corporations to strengthen accountability, efficiency, and financial sustainability. I want to now turn to revenue projections. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, based on the outlined policy measures and structural reforms, total revenue collections, including appropriation in aid, for the financial year 2025-26 budget is projected to be at 3,321.8 billion, equivalent to 17.2% of GDP. Of this amount, ordinary revenue is projected at Kenya shillings 2,754.7 billion, which is equivalent to 14.3% of GDP. And ministerial appropriation in aid, or if you like, non-tax revenue, is projected at 567 billion shillings. Grants are projected at 46.9 billion, or 0.2% of the GDP. Having talked about revenue projections, Let me now turn to expenditure projections. Mr. Speaker, total expenditure in the financial year 2025-2026 budget is projected at 4,291.9 billion, equivalent to 22.3% of GDP. And of this, recurrent expenditures will amount to 3,134.4 billion, equivalent to 16.3% of GDP. And development expenditures, including allocations to domestic and foreign finance projects, contingency fund, and equalization fund, will amount to 693.2 billion, equivalent to 3.6% of GDP. Total allocation to county governments is projected at 474.9 billion, of which equitable share is 405.1 billion. Fiscal deficit and financing. Mr. Speaker, the resultant fiscal deficit, including grants, is projected at 923.2 billion, which is equivalent to 4.8% of GDP, down from the estimated 997.5 billion or 5.7% of GDP in financial year 2024-25. The fiscal deficit for the financial year 25-26 budget will be financed by net external borrowing of 287.7 billion, equivalent to 1.5% of GDP, and net domestic borrowing of 635.5 billion, which is equivalent to 3.3% of GDP. Public debt management. Mr. Speaker, Kenya's public debt is projected to remain with these sustainable levels over the medium term. In present value terms, the debt to GDP is projected to progressively decline from 63% in 2024 towards the debt anchor of 55% or minus 5% of GDP plus or minus 5% of GDP for 2028. To support the projected decline in debt levels, the National Treasury will continue implementing various reforms as guided by the medium-term debt management strategy, including liability management operations, continue pursuing use of concessional loans from multilateral, bilateral, and limited commercial sources such as international bond issuances. Additionally, reforms targeted to support domestic market development will eventually reduce the cost of public debt while sustaining fiscal consolidation efforts to ensure debt remains within sustainable levels. Further, the government will explore emerging funding instruments such as debt swaps, diaspora bonds, sustainability-linked bonds, and environmental, social, and governance debt instruments to fund budget deficit and manage public debt. This strategic approach will not only diversify our financing options, but also strengthen international partnerships and promote sustainable growth. Mr. Speaker and honorable members, the government is keen on sustaining transparency and improving efficiency on public debt service. To this end, the National Treasury is in the process of integrating the Commonwealth Meridian Debt Management System with the Integrated Financial Management Information System, IFMIS, and the core banking systems of Central Bank of Kenya. On public-private partnerships framework, Mr. Speaker, the government continues to strengthen the role of public-private partnerships in financing our development agenda. Currently, there are 32 PPP projects at various stages which are targeted to mobilize 70 billion shillings in the financial year 2025-2026 through private investments in priority sectors, including energy, water, housing, health, and transport. So, Mr. Speaker, to enhance transparency and accountability at all stages of project life cycle while implementing PPP, I recently issued a circular on mandatory disclosure requirements for all privately initiated proposals. This measure is part of our broader effort to strengthen the integrity of the PPP program and to ensure that private sector participation in public projects fosters public trust. Mr. Speaker, the National Treasury in May 2025 received the final report of the Committee of Experts on leveraging local financial markets for investment into public-private partnerships and implementation. The committee recommended the establishment and operationalization of PPP Implementation Trust Fund as the central mechanism for enhancing private sector participation in PPPs, particularly through institutional and retail entities. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, the PPP regulations under consideration by Parliament will enhance clarity around PPP processes, thereby enhancing efficiency and project delivery. This will also unlock a pipeline of county-level specific PPP projects in partnership with development partners. In strengthening public finance management reforms, number one is migration to accrual accounting. Mr. Speaker, to strengthen management of public resources, all government ministries, departments and agencies adopted accrual accounting as of 1st July 2024. The first accrual-based financial statements are expected for the financial year ending 30th June 2025, which is a few days away. The accrual accounting will enable the government to account for all assets and liabilities, including all government assets. Second, Treasury single account. Mr. Speaker, to enhance cash management, the migration of ministries, departments and agencies to the Treasury single account is progressing well. The Central Bank of Kenya is scheduled to go live with its T24 system upgrade in July 2025. This upgraded platform will support the implementation of Treasury single account core functionalities and facilitate the National Treasury to roll out the key elements of the Treasury single account system. Concurrently, the National Treasury is on track to onboard county governments in 2026. The final phase will involve integrating all remaining national government entities into the Treasury single account by financial year 26-27. Third, zero-based budgeting. Mr. Speaker, to reorient the budgeting and expenditure framework, the government adopted the zero-based budgeting approach while finalizing the financial year 25-26 budget. To implement this approach, the National Treasury developed a budget costing tool that was integrated into the IFMIS budget module for the national government. The zero-based budgeting approach compels all ministries, departments and agencies to justify expenditures from scratch, thus ensuring resources are allocated to high-impact activities. It promotes transparency, efficiency, by requiring clear justification and critical assessment of spending. Mr. Speaker, I know this statement is long. And by the way, Mr. Speaker, you know Kenya is not a small economy. We are number 6 in Africa. And we have jumped over Ethiopia. So you can't have a 3-pager statement for an economy as big as Kenya.
Gone without apology. Gone.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much.
So far, so good.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, I'm now turning to resource allocation so that honorable members can appreciate and the Kenyan people where we have allocated the limited resources that we have. Mr. Speaker, now let me highlight the government spending priorities for financial year 25-26. Expenditures for the financial year 25-26 will consolidate the gains realized under the bottom-up economic transformation agenda, with special focus placed on promoting investment in core pillars and their enablers through a value chain approach. Number one, under agricultural transformation and inclusive growth, which is the first pillar. Mr. Speaker, the government will continue to transform the agriculture sector by increasing productivity in key value chains such as fisheries and aquaculture, horticulture, food crops, livestock and rangeland development. The government will scale up support to farmers through input financing, subsidies, and extension services. This will move the country from food deficit to food surplus, reduce reliance on food imports, and revamp export crops. Mr. Speaker, in this respect, I have proposed an allocation of 47.6 billion for various programs under this sector, despite the fact that agriculture is largely devolved. This includes 8 billion for the fertilizer subsidy program, 10.2 billion for the National Agricultural Value Chain Development Project, 800 million for small-scale irrigation and value addition project, 1.2 billion for food security and crop diversification project, and 5.8 billion for the food systems resilience project. Mr. Speaker, to promote livestock production, I have proposed Kenya shillings 2.3 billion for de-risking, inclusion, and value enhancement of pastoral economies programs. 1.6 million Kenya shillings for Kenya Livestock Commercialization Program. And 280 million for the Livestock Value Chain Support Project. I have also proposed Kenya shillings 340 million for the development leather industrial park at Kenani. Mr. Speaker, to support the growth of blue economy, I have proposed a total of 8.2 billion to the blue economy and fisheries subsector. This includes 2.3 billion for aquaculture business development project, 2.4 billion to the Kenya Marine Fisheries and Socio-Economic Development Project, and 500 million for the Kabonyo Fisheries and Aquaculture Training Center. Mr. Speaker, to raise agricultural productivity and enhance resilience to climate change risks in targeted smallholder farming and pastoral communities, I've proposed an allocation of Kenya shillings 318 million towards an ending drought emergencies project and 1.3 billion to resilience for food and the nutrition security program in Horn of Africa project. Mr. Speaker, the government is also committed to land reforms to address historical inequalities, promote equitable access, and ensure sustainable land management. To this end, I have proposed a sum of 3.8 billion for settlement of the landless. I have also proposed 1.1 billion for processing and registration of title deeds, another 712 million for digitization of land registries, another 200 million for georeferencing of land parcels, and 220 million for construction of land registries to safeguard legitimacy of land ownership. The next pillar is transforming the micro, small, and medium enterprises economy. Mr. Speaker, the government recognizes the challenge of accessing affordable credit by most micro, small, and medium enterprises, and Kenyans at the bottom of the pyramid. To address this challenge, I have proposed an additional allocation of 300 million to the Financial Inclusion Fund, popularly known as the Hustler Fund, to scale up access to credit for households and MSMEs. I have also proposed an additional 308 million for the Youth Enterprise Development Fund, 550 million for the Center for Entrepreneurship Project, and 1.3 billion for Rural Kenya Financial Inclusion Facility. Under housing and settlement, which is the other pillar. Mr. Speaker, the government is committed to facilitating the construction of decent, safe, and affordable houses for Kenyans. Through the affordable housing program, the government is creating jobs for the youth directly in the construction sector and indirectly through the production and supply of building products. To continue supporting this initiative, I have proposed an allocation of 128.3 billion for the housing, urban development, and public works subsector. This includes 13.4 billion under the Kenya Urban Program, 64.5 billion for construction of affordable housing units, 10.5 billion for construction of social housing units, and 16.5 billion for social and fiscal infrastructure. Mr. Speaker, other proposed allocations to the housing, urban development, and public works interventions include 7.2 billion shillings for the Kenya Informal Settlement Improvement Project Phase 2, 3.5 billion for the construction of housing units for the National Police and the Kenya Prison, 500 million for building climate resilience of the Urban Poor Program, 184 million for construction of footbridges, and 454 million targeted to support construction of county headquarters. Mr. Speaker, to ensure the safety of Kenyans through compliance with building codes and standards, as well as other industry regulations, I have proposed an allocation of 2.6 billion for the regulation and development of the construction industry. I am aware members are aware, I know members are aware of the challenges we have had where collapsed buildings kill many, many Kenyans as a result of carelessness of various developers. Let me turn to universal health coverage. Mr. Speaker, access to quality and affordable health care through the universal health coverage program is central to this government. Towards this end, Mr. Speaker, I have proposed an allocation of Kenya shillings 138.1 billion, up from 123 billion in the current year's budget, to the health sector to support various activities and programs. This includes 6.2 billion for universal health coverage, coordination, and management, 13.1 billion for primary health care, and that is up from 7.1 billion in the current year, and 430 million to provide medical cover for the orphans, elderly, and disabled persons in our society. Mr. Speaker, to lower cases of HIV, AIDS, malaria, and tuberculosis, and enhance vaccines and immunization program in the country, I have proposed 17.3 billion for the Global Fund and Kenya shillings 4.6 billion for vaccines and immunization programs, respectively. Mr. Speaker, to enhance early diagnosis and management of cancer and reduce the burden of treatment of chronic and critical illnesses among Kenyans, I have proposed an allocation of 8 billion to the Emergencies, Chronic and Critical Illnesses Fund to be managed by SHA, and this has moved from 5 billion shillings in the current budget. 1 billion for construction of a cancer center at Kisii Level 5 Hospital, 100 million to strengthen cancer management in Kenyatta National Hospital, and 100 million for expansion of comprehensive cancer treatment at Kenyatta University Teaching, Referral and Research Hospital. Mr. Speaker, to improve health service delivery, I have also proposed a sum of 42.4 billion for our referral hospitals, including Kenyatta National Hospital, Moi Teaching and Referral Hospital, Kenyatta University Teaching, Referral and Research Hospital, Mwai Kibaki Teaching and Referral Hospital in Othaya, Jaramogi Oginga Odinga Teaching and Referral Hospital in Kisumu, and Mathare National Teaching and Referral Hospital. Other locations include Kenya shillings 1.3 billion for the construction of Kenyatta National Hospital, Burns and Pediatrics Center. Mr. Speaker, I have also proposed 5.2 billion for Kenya Medical Supplies Agency to recapitalize it, 2.7 billion for the Kenya Medical Research Institute, 500 million for procurement of family planning and reproductive health commodities, and 300 million for procurement of equipment at the National Blood Transfusion Services. Further, to strengthen the capacity of medical personnel, I have also proposed an allocation of 4.3 billion for medical interns, 3.2 billion for community health promoters, 303 million for training of health personnel, and 8.9 billion for the Kenya Medical Training Centers, KMTCs. On digital superhighway and creative economy, which is the other pillar of the better principle, the government continues to invest in digital superhighway to improve ICT infrastructure and expand internet access nationwide. The creative industry is a significant source of employment, particularly for the youth, and has the potential to address high unemployment rates through promotion of music, theater, graphic design, digital animation, fashion and craft, among others. Mr. Speaker, to support growth in the digital superhighway, I have proposed an allocation of 12.7 billion to fund initiatives in the information communication technology sector. Specifically, this proposed allocation includes 2.3 billion shillings for the construction of Kenya Advanced Institute of Science and Technology at Konza Technopolis, 3.7 billion for Kenya Digital Economy Acceleration Project, and 333.2 million for government shared services, 382 million for the digital superhighway, 689 million for the establishment of digital hubs, and 750 million for maintenance and rehabilitation of national optic fiber backbone infrastructure. In order to fast-track the development of the Konza Technopolis city, I have proposed an allocation of 3.1 billion for Konza data center and smart city facilities. The government is also committed to enhance transparency, accountability, and efficiency in public procurement. I have, in this regard, proposed an allocation of 700 million for rolling out the implementation of the electronic government procurement system, what we call EGP, or EGP, EG procurement. Other key allocations to critical sectors supporting better include the following: investing in critical infrastructure. Mr. Speaker, the government will continue to invest in transportation networks, including roads, railways, and air travel, to reduce travel time and logistic costs, making markets more accessible and facilitating the movement of goods and people. Towards this end, I have proposed an allocation of 217.3 billion for development of roads across the country. This includes 30 billion to support construction of new roads and bridges, 70.8 billion for rehabilitation of roads, because we have so many long, the length of roads is so long that we have to maintain them and rehabilitate. And 115.6 billion for road maintenance. Actually, this 115 billion is more than the 85 million that we have in the current budget by 30 billion for maintenance of our roads. Mr. Speaker, to expand railway transport and its infrastructure, I have proposed an allocation of 38 billion shillings. I have also proposed an allocation of 450 million for the Kenya ferry ramp in Mombasa, 331 million for Nairobi bus rapid transport project, and 298.7 million for promotion of e-mobility projects. To facilitate movement of goods and people in our inland waters, I have also proposed an additional 110.4 million for acquisition of ferries for Lake Victoria. Mr. Speaker, to scale up production of reliable and affordable energy, I have also proposed an allocation of 62.8 billion to cater for key energy interventions. This includes 31.6 billion for the national grid system, 16.3 billion for rural electrification, 11.6 billion for development of geothermal energy, 2.1 billion for alternative energy technologies, and 743 million for development of nuclear energy. Let me now talk about improving education outcomes. Mr. Speaker, the education sector plays a vital role in economic development by enhancing human capital, driving innovation, and improving productivity. To this end, the government continues to invest in education to raise learning outcomes and ensure equal opportunities for all. Mr. Speaker, I have proposed a total allocation of 702.7 billion to the education sector, which is almost 28% of our entire budget. This will include an allocation of 387.2 billion to the Teacher Service Commission. The allocation for TSC will include 7.2 billion for recruitment of intern teachers and 980 for capacity building of teachers on competence-based education curriculum. Further, I have proposed an allocation of 7 billion for free primary education, 28.9 billion for junior secondary school capitation, and 51.9 billion for free day secondary education. In addition, Mr. Speaker, I have also proposed an allocation of 5.9 billion for administering the national examinations, 3 billion for the school feeding program, and 7.2 billion for the recruitment of intern teachers. I think that one I'd already mentioned, that's a repeat, and 4 billion for the technical, vocational, educational training and entrepreneurship project. Mr. Speaker, to enhance infrastructure development and provide a safe learning environment in our schools, I have proposed an allocation of 1.7 billion for primary and secondary schools infrastructure, and 1.4 billion for construction and equipping of technical training institutes and vocational training centers. In addition, I have proposed 13.3 billion for the Kenya Primary Education Equity in Learning Program, and 2.3 billion for the Kenya Secondary School Quality Improvement Project. Mr. Speaker, other proposed allocations to the education sector include 993 million for research, science, technology, and innovation, 41.5 billion to the Higher Education Loans Board for provision of loans to university and TVET students, and this has increased from 35 billion to 41.5 billion for health. Another 16.9 billion for scholarship for university students, and 7.7 billion capitation and scholarship for TVET students. In supporting manufacturing for job creation, Mr. Speaker, to continue promoting local industries, I have proposed an allocation of 18 billion under various implementing ministries, departments, and agencies. Out of this, 4.5 billion will support establishment of county integrated agro-industrial parks in various counties. 2.8 billion for supporting access to finance and enterprise recovery, what we call SAFER project. 602 million for a development of Athi River Textile Hub. 705 million for establishment of flagship export processing zones hubs. 504 million for development of special economic zone textile park in Naivasha. And 798 million for Kenya jobs and economic transformation. Mr. Speaker, in order to revitalize and maximize the benefits from our cash crops, I have proposed 2 billion for coffee cherry revolving fund and another 2 billion for coffee debt waivers. This is up from the 3 billion that was allocated to this subsector in the last financial year's budget. Another 1.5 billion for sugar sector reforms, and 120 million for modernization and revitalization of cotton ginneries, and 245 million for horticultural produce compliance enhancement project. Mr. Speaker, to support local production and processing of edible oils, I have proposed an allocation of 300 million for the National Edible Oil Crops Promotion Project. Mr. Speaker, to enhance milk processing, I have proposed an allocation of 400 million for excess milk mop-up and 150 million for modernization of milk processing factories in Runyenjes and Narok. Mr. Speaker, to equip our youth with essential training and internship opportunities in trade and industry, I have proposed an allocation of 330 million for the Kenya Industry and Entrepreneurship Project, another 500 million for the construction of industrial research laboratories, and 109 million for constituency industrial development centers. Now let me speak to improving security. Mr. Speaker, a stable and secure environment fosters investment, trade, and overall economic growth. In this regard, I have proposed an allocation of 202.3 billion for defense, another 125.7 billion for the National Police Service, and 51.4 billion for the National Intelligence Service, another 32.5 billion for internal security and national administration, and 38.1 billion for prison services. I have also proposed an additional allocation of 10 billion to cater for leasing of police motor vehicles and 3.6 billion for police modernization program. Mr. Speaker, to combat crime and enhance administration of justice, I have proposed 1.2 billion for construction and modernization of national forensic facilities. Now, let me turn to protecting the vulnerable groups in our society. Mr. Speaker, social protection services are crucial for building more equitable and resilient societies by reducing poverty, inequality, and vulnerability, as well as promoting economic growth and social cohesion. I have in this regard proposed an allocation of 41.4 billion in this budget to protect the vulnerable members of our society and promote affirmative action. This is increasing from 33 billion in the current financial year's budget. Out of this allocation, 25.1 billion will cater for cash transfers to the elderly persons. And again, this has moved from 18 billion, so it has increased by 7 billion. 8.9 billion for cash transfers to orphans and vulnerable children. Again, that's a jump of 1 billion more. And 1.5 billion for cash transfers to persons living with disability. Again, this has been increased from 1.19 billion. Mr. Speaker, the proposed allocations also includes 3.9 billion for the Kenya Hunger Safety Net Program, 450 million for the National Fund for the Disabled of Kenya. In addition, there is 600 million which will go to the Child Welfare Society of Kenya, 100 million for the Presidential Bursary for Orphans, 180 million for the Street Families Rehabilitation Trust Fund, and 90 million for the National Albinism Support Program, and finally, 90 million for the National Autism Support Program. On equity, poverty reduction, women and youth empowerment. Mr. Speaker, unemployment remains one of the most persistent and challenging issues facing the country today. The challenge is not only about job creation, but also bringing the critical gap between education and employment and developing relevant skills for the modern economy. In order to empower the youth and support businesses owned by youth and women and to promote development in the constituencies, I have proposed 105.6 billion for these initiatives. This allocation includes 10 billion, I have proposed 105.6 billion, not million, for these initiatives. This allocation includes 10 billion for the National Youth Service, NYS, 3.6 billion to National Youth Opportunity Towards Advancement, what is famously known as NYOTA, and Kenya shillings 318 million for the Youth Enterprise Development Fund. In addition, I have proposed 990 million for film development services. Mr. Speaker, to further empower our women and girls, I have proposed 353 million for the Women Enterprise Fund, 940 million for provision of sanitary towels to school-going girls, 254 million for strengthening prevention and response to gender-based violence in Kenya, 110 million for eradication of female genital mutilation, and 4 billion for the National Government Affirmative Action Fund, otherwise known as NGAF. Mr. Speaker, to promote regional equity, reduce poverty, and enhance social development across the country, I have proposed 58.8 billion for the National Government Constituency Development Fund, 9.6 billion for the Equalization Fund to finance programs in identified marginal areas or marginalized areas, and another 15.9 billion for the Kenya Devolution Support Program number 2. To stimulate tourism growth, sports, culture, recreational and arts, Mr. Speaker, in order to harness national pride, empower our youth and position Kenya as a regional beacon of talent and heritage, I have proposed an allocation of 29.7 billion to support sports, culture and recreation as well as tourism. This proposed allocation includes 13.5 billion for the Sports, Arts and Social Development Fund, 2.3 billion to establish an automation and digitization system for the sports registrar, 241 million for the Anti-Doping Agency of Kenya to make Kenya remain competitive in the athletics and other sports, 402 million for Sports Kenya, 245 million for the Kenya Academy of Sports, 8.2 billion for the Tourism Fund, and 4.8 billion for Tourism Promotion Fund. On environmental protection, water and natural resources, Mr. Speaker, to safeguard natural ecosystems, ensure sustainable water use, and tackle the impact of climate change, I have proposed an allocation of 10.7 billion for forest resources conservation and management, 1.6 billion for forest research and development, 3.7 billion for environment management and protection, 11.5 billion for the Kenya Financing Locally Led Climate Action Project, which is known as FLOCA, 1.6 billion for meteorological service, and 13.2 billion for wildlife security, conservation and management. Another 953 million for wildlife research and development. In addition, I have also proposed 1.1 billion for human wildlife conflict compensation and 950 million for wildlife insurance. Mr. Speaker, I have also proposed an allocation of 26.8 billion for water and sewerage infrastructure development. Out of this, 16.5 billion for water resources management and 1.9 billion for water storage and flood control. In addition, I have also proposed 15 billion for irrigation and land reclamation and 266 million for water harvesting and storage for irrigation. In order to improve governance and sustaining the fight against corruption, Mr. Speaker, to enhance good governance, intensify the fight against corruption, and entrench integrity and accountability in public service delivery, I have proposed Kenya shillings 4.5 billion for the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, 4.5 billion for the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions, 5.3 billion to the State Law Office, and 8.7 billion for the Office of the Auditor General. In addition, Mr. Speaker, to enhance the oversight and legislative role of Parliament, I propose an allocation of 48 billion for Parliament. To enable administration of justice, I also propose an allocation of 27.8 billion for the judiciary. Now let me turn to allocation to county governments. Mr. Speaker, to support devolution, county governments will receive 405.1 billion in the financial year 2025-2026 as an equitable share of revenue raised nationally, an increase of 17.6 billion from Kenya shillings 387.4 billion in financial year 24-25. The 405.1 billion represents 25.8% of the most recently audited revenues for financial year 2020-2021, way higher than the minimum of 15% prescribed in Article 203(2) of the Constitution. In order to ensure food and nutrition security, infrastructure development, improved water and sanitation systems, among others, county governments will receive an additional 69.8 billion as additional allocations. Equalization Fund. Mr. Speaker, to support implementation of projects in the marginalized areas, 7.85 billion has been proposed as an allocation to the Equalization Fund in the financial year 2025-2026, and an additional 2.74 billion to settle outstanding arrears owed to the fund. Mr. Speaker, now allow me to speak to measures to enhance county government's own source revenue. Mr. Speaker, the own source revenue policy recommended the development of a national framework legislation to regulate the introduction of taxes, fees, and charges by county governments. Consequently, the National Treasury and other stakeholders developed the County Government Revenue Raising Process Bill, which is currently before Parliament for consideration. Again, I urge the Honourable House to consider the bill and prioritize its enactment. Mr. Speaker, now let me turn to taxation measures. Mr. Speaker, I will now turn to tax policy measures supporting the financial year 2025-2026. These measures include proposals contained in the Finance Bill 2025, as well as the customs duty measures agreed upon by the East African Community Ministers for Finance during the East African Community pre-budget meeting held in May this year, which I personally attended. These measures are set to take effect from 1st July 2025. Mr. Speaker, the freedoms we enjoy in this country have not come easy. In the last couple of years, Kenyans have spoken clearly and loudly on the desired direction in development of policy and governance of taxation. In 2023, the minority side in Parliament, supported by the efforts of the then ODM chairman, protested against the Finance Act of 2023. Last year, Mr. Speaker, some provisions in the Finance Bill 2024 triggered protests across the country. These actions in the 2 years regrettably resulted in the loss of lives and destruction of property and adversely impacted economic lives of many. In the remembrance of our fellow Kenyans who lost their most precious lives during these protests, allow me, Mr. Speaker, that we observe a minute of silence in their remembrance.
Will you be upstanding?
May their souls continue resting in eternal peace. Thank you, honorable members. Mr. Speaker, no life should be lost and no property should be destroyed again. The message from Kenyans was clear. Since I took office at the National Treasury and Economic Planning, I assured Kenyans that we shall strive to reduce tax burden. In this respect, the Finance Bill of 2025 has neither proposed new taxes nor raised any tax rates. Instead, we have chosen to enhance tax revenue collection through administrative reforms by simplifying and streamlining tax laws to make them clearer and easier to implement, thereby by improving taxpayer compliance. The process also involves rationalization of tax expenditure to enhance equity and fairness. Mr. Speaker, the revenue foregone through tax incentives or tax expenditure has increased significantly, rising from Kenya shillings 393.1 billion, which is equivalent to 2.9% of GDP in 2022, to 510.6 billion, which is equivalent to 3.4% of GDP in 2023. To reverse this trend, the Finance Bill of 2025 proposes reforms to rationalize tax expenditures so as to promote equity, fairness, efficiency, and reduce distortions within the tax system. The proposed reforms are in line with the national tax policy and the medium-term revenue strategy, which this Honorable House passed. So, Mr. Speaker, from the proposed reforms, we expect to raise Kenya shillings 30 billion more as additional revenue. Mr. Speaker, customs measures agreed upon by East African community ministers during the pre-budget meeting are intended to protect our industries and ensure they access raw materials and inputs at affordable prices. The meeting allowed Kenya to import tea packaging materials at a lower duty rate of 10%. In addition, Kenya was granted an extension of duty remission to import wheat at the rate of 10%. These measures will support our wheat and tea farmers. Mr. Speaker, I will begin with the customs measures and later provide highlights on the proposed amendments of tax laws in the Finance Bill of 2025. On customs measures, to meet the local demand of rice, Kenya was allowed to extend the stay of application on the East African Community Common External Tariff and import rice at the rate of 35% or USD 200 per metric ton, whichever is higher, instead of the common external tariff rate of 75% or USD 345 per metric ton. Mindful of wheat farmers in Kenya, East African community ministers agreed on duty remission of wheat at a rate of 10% instead of the common external tariff rate of 35%, provided the millers who intend to import wheat under the duty remission must first purchase locally produced wheat. Mr. Speaker, to promote local assembly of telecommunication equipment, Kenya was granted an extension of duty remission on inputs for assembly of telecommunication devices, including mobile phones, laptops, and tablets. Mr. Speaker, in order to reduce the production cost of animal feeds, Kenya requested for an extension to import inputs for production of animal feeds duty-free under the East African Community Duty Remission Scheme, which was granted. We urge the producers of animal feeds to apply for the remission. Mr. Speaker, the leather sector is one of the priority value chains under BETA. To support local producers of leather and leather products, Kenya was allowed to extend the stay of application on the common external tariff rate and apply import duty rate of 35% on leather products. To promote tanneries to supply local manufacturers with high-quality leather, Kenya was allowed to import chemicals for leather processing under duty remission. Mr. Speaker, to support local assembly of transformers, which is critical to energy distribution, the East African community ministers approved Kenya's request for a tariff split on transformers to provide for a distinction between fully built and unassembled transformers. Currently, it is one line, tariff line, and it is very difficult for us to separate and incentivize either of them. So, Mr. Speaker, to support the local assemblers of cranes, Kenya was granted approval to import inputs for assembly of cranes duty-free under duty remission. Mr. Speaker, last year Kenya was granted a stay of application on the East African East African Community Common External Tariff to apply a higher duty rate ranging from 25 to 35% on certain types of paper used in manufacturing packaging materials. This action adversely affected exporters, particularly in tea sector. To address this, Kenya opted not to request for an extension of the stay of this common external tariff. And this decision will not affect local manufacturers of packaging materials, as they will continue importing raw materials under duty remission. So, Mr. Speaker, now let me speak to the Finance Bill of 2025. Let me now highlight some of the proposals contained in the proposed Finance Bill 2025 under Income Tax Act. Mr. Speaker, to enable faster recovery of investment by businesses on loose items such as utensils, linen, and industrial tools, the bill proposes to amend the Income Tax Act to allow for a full cost deduction of these items in the first year of purchase, as opposed to the current 3 years. This will improve cash flows of the relevant businesses. Mr. Speaker, we have noted increased tax disputes arising from audits carried carried on cross-border transactions. These disputes could have been avoided if the multinational companies had advanced pricing agreements with the commissioner at KRA. To address this gap, the bill is proposing or proposes to amend the Income Tax Act to empower the commissioner to enter into advanced pricing agreements with multinational companies. Mr. Speaker, the Tax Laws Amendment Act of 2024, passed in December last year, introduced the minimum top-up tax in line with the global best practices. But the Act inadvertently omitted the due date for payment of the tax, thus creating enforcement challenges. To address this, I have proposed an amendment to the Income Tax Act to clarify that the due date will be the end of the 4th month following the close of a company's accounting period. Mr. Speaker, again, the Tax Laws Amendment Act of 2024, passed in December last year, exempted gratuity payments from income tax, actually pension and gratuity. However, the provision is not clear whether all gratuity, including from private pension schemes, is exempted from tax. In this respect, the bill is proposing to amend the Income Tax Act to clarify that all gratuity payments, whether from public or private sources, are exempt from tax. Mr. Speaker, to encourage wider participation in virtual asset transactions, especially among the youth, the bill proposes to reduce the digital asset tax rate from 3% to 1.5%. And Mr. Speaker, to ensure consistency and effective administration of the law, the bill proposes to amend the 3rd schedule to the Income Tax Act to clarify that fringe benefit tax is payable by the employer at the corporate tax rate, and that withholding tax on qualifying dividends and qualifying interest are final tax. That is not clear in the current arrangement. And Mr. Speaker, under the current Income Tax Act, individuals with mortgages, and honorable members would be interested in listening to this. Mr. Speaker, under the current Income Tax Act, individuals with mortgages for purchasing or improving residential houses can claim tax relief on interest payment on the mortgage. However, those who take up a mortgage to construct their own residential houses are excluded from this relief. That is the law as it is today. To ensure fairness, the bill proposes to extend this benefit to interest on mortgages taken for construction of residential houses. This will support home ownership and align with the better pillar on affordable housing. Mr. Speaker, the current tax-free daily subsistence allowance of $2,000 for private sector employees on official duties outside their usual workplace is lower than that of the public sector employees. To enhance equity, the bill is proposing to increase the tax-free daily subsistence allowance for private sector employees from 2,000 to 10,000 shillings. Mr. Speaker, Kenya has an opportunity to strengthen its position as a regional financial hub. In this respect, the bill proposes amendment to the Income Tax Act to provide that companies certified by the Nairobi International Financial Center Authority, NIFCA, that invest new capital of at least $3 billion over a period of 3 years to pay a reduced corporate tax rate of 15% for the first 10 years and 20% for the subsequent 10 years. The companies qualifying for this will be required to employ Kenyans at senior management level. The startup companies that are certified by Nairobi International Financial Center Authority will enjoy a 15% tax rate for the first 3 years and 20% for the subsequent 4 years. And dividends earned by certified holding companies and regional headquarters will be exempted from tax provided that at least 250 million is reinvested annually in Kenya. Mr. Speaker, we have noted that some employees seek refunds from KRA on reliefs of deductions that ought to have been deducted by their employers. To address this challenge, the bill proposes to amend the Income Tax Act to make it mandatory for employers to consider all eligible tax reliefs and deductions when computing employees' income tax. Presently, employers are not compelled to deduct these reliefs in computing pay as you earn. Value-added tax. Mr. Speaker, while a supplier is required to issue a tax invoice at the point of sale, There is currently no definition of tax invoice under the VAT Act. This creates ambiguity on what constitutes a tax invoice. To resolve this ambiguity, the bill is proposing to amend the VAT Act to define a tax invoice. Mr. Speaker, to strengthen tax administration and enhance compliance, the bill proposes to require the issuance of tax invoices for all suppliers, whether taxable or exempt. This amendment will support better record keeping by taxpayers and facilitate the pre-population of returns. Mr. Speaker, to support business operations, the bill proposes to shorten the period for claiming refunds on bad debts from 3 years to 2 years, and to allow taxpayers to either request for a refund or offset it against future VAT liabilities. Mr. Speaker, again, entities in special economic zones currently benefit from VAT exemptions and zero rating, but there is no provision to recover tax when these benefits are misused or abused. To safeguard revenue and promote accountability, the bill proposes to recover VAT where exempted or zero-rated goods or services are used for purposes other than those intended. Mr. Speaker, to prevent leakages or revenue leakages, strengthen tax administration, and promote equity across sectors, the bill proposes to move some zero-rated goods and services that are consumed locally to exempt status. Further, Mr. Speaker, some of the goods exempted from VAT have multiple uses, making it difficult to effectively monitor whether they are finally used for the intended purpose. In this respect, the bill proposes to amend the VAT Act to remove such exemptions. Under excise duty, Mr. Speaker, to minimize tax disputes relating to classification of locally produced excisable goods, the bill proposes an amendment to the Excise Duty Act to clarify that the East African Community Common External Tariff and its classification rules shall apply to all excisable goods, both imported and locally manufactured. Mr. Speaker, to streamline the processing of application for license to manufacture excisable goods by the Commissioner, the bill proposes to amend the Excise Duty Act to require the Commissioner to provide feedback on the application within 14 working days from the date of receipt of all valid documents. Mr. Speaker, the Excise Duty Act provides for taxation of alcoholic beverages based on pure alcoholic content, which increased cost for producers using spirits over 90% alcohol content as raw materials from 356 shillings to about 1,000 shillings per litre. Since undenatured extra-neutral alcohol is a key input in the manufacturing of spirituous beverages, the bill proposes to amend the Excise Duty Act to provide an excise duty rate of 500 shillings per litre for undenatured extra-neutral alcohol above 90% strength supplied to licensed spirituous beverage manufacturers. Mr. Speaker, to promote equity and fairness in taxation of accessible services offered through the internet or electronic network, the bill proposes to amend the Excise Duty Act to bring non-resident persons without a physical presence in Kenya into the tax net when they supply accessible services through these mediums. Mr. Speaker, to avoid double taxation of fees charged by digital lenders, the bill proposes to amend the definition of digital lender under the Excise Duty Act to exclude entities licensed under the Banking Act, the Cooperative Societies Act, and the Microfinance Act. Honorable members, to enhance clarity and consistency in the administration of excise duty legislation, the bill is proposing to amend the Excise Duty Act to clarify that imported plastic products, including plates, self-adhesive plastics, and printed polymers, will be subjected to excise duty at 25% of the excise value, or 200 per kilogram, whichever is higher. Now let me speak to miscellaneous fees and levies. Mr. Speaker, the Export and Investment Promotion Levy on billets and wire rods, which are raw materials in manufacture of nails, fencing wires, gabions, bolts, and nuts, have raised production costs of these products. In this respect, the bill proposes to amend the Miscellaneous Fees and Levies Act to review the levy downwards. Mr. Speaker, to promote Nairobi's regional aircraft maintenance hub while managing tax expenditures, the bill proposes to amend the Miscellaneous Fees and Levies Act to introduce import declaration fee and railway development levy on small aircrafts and helicopters, but retain the exemption on spare parts of all aircrafts. The Tax Procedures Act, 2015. No, the act is 2015. Mr. Speaker, to enhance the Commissioner's ability to recover unpaid taxes from non-residents, the bill is proposing to amend the Tax Procedures Act to expand the scope of agency notices to include non-resident persons. Mr. Speaker, and this is controversial, to close a loophole that hinders enforcement of tax compliance and ensure timely revenue collection, the bill proposes to amend the Tax Procedures Act to clarify that enforcement of tax collection when a tax appeals to be done or a court judgment on tax dispute is in favor of the Commissioner shall only be suspended where a stay order has been granted. That is not the one that I thought I was going to read. The controversial one is yet to come. Mr. Speaker, to remove the financial and legal barriers that may hinder effective enforcement of recovery of unpaid taxes, the bill proposes to amend the Tax Procedures Act to provide that property transfers made by or to the Commissioner in recovery of tax liabilities be exempted from stamp duty. Mr. Speaker, to promote transparency, uphold fair administrative action, and strengthen trust in tax administration, the bill proposes to amend the Tax Procedures Act to require the Commissioner to provide reasons when issuing amended tax assessments to a taxpayer, so that we avoid misuse of Kenya Revenue Authority for political reasons, where they just sit and tell you that 3 years ago you did not pay such and such, and yet you had already been cleared for tax purposes. Reasons must be provided. Mr. Speaker, to address taxpayers' concerns regarding penalties and interest arising from system-related delays or administrative errors beyond taxpayers' control, the bill proposes to amend the Tax Procedures Act to allow the Cabinet Secretary to grant waivers on penalties and interest arising from such circumstances upon recommendation by the Commissioner. Presently, if there is any error made by the Kenya Revenue Authority on your tax assessment, there is no law to reverse it. So in conclusion, Mr. Speaker and fellow Kenyans, we have experienced a wide range of challenges as a nation in the past 2 years. In navigating these trying times, we have demonstrated exceptional resilience and remained steadfast in our development and democratic journey. Kenyans have demonstrated commendable patience and resilience as the government continues to fulfill its commitments to improve livelihoods through the implementation of better. And under the leadership of His Excellency the President, Dr. William Samoei Ruto, we have made meaningful progress in advancing our development agenda, promoting inclusion, fostering national unity, and working together to build our nation and renew the spirit of patriotism. Mr. Speaker, the budget I have presented today has been thoughtfully prepared to navigate the delicate balance of competing interests while adhering to our fiscal consolidation plan. Mr. Speaker, I am confident that the policies and structural reforms I have outlined provide a solid foundation for sustaining our socio-economic transformation. These measures are designed to stimulate job creation, strengthen our economic recovery, and ease the cost of living. I therefore call upon honorable members and all Kenyans to support the implementation of the budget as we work together in pursuit of shared prosperity. Finally, Mr. Speaker, the journey to a prosperous Kenya calls for leadership and collective commitment of all Kenyans. Last year, the Orange Democratic Movement joined hands with the United Democratic Alliance under Kenya Kwanza to form a broad-based government. This unity has brought renewed peace and stability to Kenya and fostered inclusive development beyond tribal lines. I wish. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. I wish to acknowledge with gratitude the unwavering leadership and vision of His Excellency the President Dr. William Samoei Ruto and His Excellency the Deputy President Professor Kithure Kindiki. I also wish to recognize the invaluable efforts of the Prime Cabinet Secretary, the Attorney General, my fellow Cabinet Secretaries, Principal Secretaries, accounting officers, and all personnel across government ministries, departments, and agencies who have diligently contributed to the development of the financial year 2025-2026. Mr. Speaker, I want to sincerely thank Baba, Right Honorable Raila. Thank you, honorable members. Mr. Speaker, I sincerely thank Baba, Right Honorable Prime Minister Raila Amolo Odinga, and the entire Orange Democratic Movement fraternity for their invaluable mentorship as well as trusting me with party leadership positions in my political journey. But, Mr. Speaker, I will not forget that I served the people of Suba South constituency as their elected representative for a period of 15 years and a further 2 years as nominated member of parliament before my appointment to the cabinet. I truly appreciate the people of Suba South constituency for the opportunity they gave me to serve them, and I will remain forever grateful. In addition, I served in the leadership of parliament as a minority leader, and equally, I appreciate the support accorded to me by this House and its leadership during my tenure. My sincere appreciation goes first to you, Honorable Speaker of the National Assembly, and your counterparts in the Senate, the majority and minority leaders, and the entire House leadership, including respective clerks, supporting the approval process of the financial year 2025-2026 budget. Second, to honorable chairs and members of both the Budget and Appropriations Committee and the Finance and National Planning Committee and all the other departmental committees of this House, as well as the staff of Parliamentary Budget Office for their constructive inputs and leadership during the approval process of this budget. Third, my colleagues at the National Treasury and Economic Planning, led by Dr. Chris Kipto, the Principal Secretary for the National Treasury, Dr. Boniface Barasa Makoha, the Principal Secretary for the State Department for Economic Planning, and Mr. Cyril Wagunda Odede, the Principal Secretary for Public Investments and Assets Management, for their commitment, dedication, and support in the preparation of this budget. Fourth, special appreciation goes to Mr. James Muhati, the former Principal Secretary for the State Department for Economic Planning, for his unwavering commitment and invaluable support during the first half of the financial year. His dedication and strategic leadership greatly advanced the ministry's mandate and played a pivotal role in shaping key national economic planning initiatives. Fifth, my appreciation goes to the Governor of the Central Bank of Kenya, the Commissioner General of the Kenya Revenue Authority, as well as the management and staff of both institutions, the financial sector regulators, and other MDAs for their valuable contributions to the budget process. Sixth, my gratitude goes to our multilateral and bilateral development partners for their continued technical and financial support. Seventh, I also thank the private sector for their participation and contribution in the budget process. And eighth, I wish to appreciate the media and non-state actors for their active engagement and participation in the financial year 2025-2026 budget. Mr. Speaker, I forever remain indebted to my beloved wife, Madam Rhoda Mbadi, and my children, who is here in the Speaker's gallery, and my children for their support and inspiration as I execute my duties at the National Treasury and Economic Planning. Their prayers and guidance gave me the zeal to proceed even during my lowest moments. I remain deeply grateful also to my siblings for raising me, paying my school fees, and supporting me throughout my journey. Mr. Speaker, I am sure that my late parents, Jadwum Stanislaus Ngongomot and his babe, Slermina Yambu Ngongo, with my mother, are smiling down from above as they see their youngest son perform this great service for the great people of Kenya today. God is truly faithful. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, my utmost gratitude goes to all Kenyans for their contributions during the budget process. Thank you, and may God bless Kenya. Mr. Speaker, before I resume my seat, you will recall that I have already submitted to this House the budget estimates and the Finance Bill 2025, together with the accompanying documents as required by the Public Finance Management Act 2012. Today, I further submit the following documents for this August House and request that you graciously receive them. 1, budget statement for the financial year 2025-26. 2, the 2025 budget policy statement. 3, estimates of revenue, grants and loans for the financial year 2025-2026. 4, financial statements for the financial year 2025-26. 5, medium-term debt management strategy 2025. 6, budget highlights, the Mwananchi Guide for the financial year 2025-26. And finally, statistical annex to the budget statement for the financial year 2025-2026. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Thank you, honorable members.
Thank you, Minister. You may now take your seat. Thank you, CS, for just above 2 hours well spent in presenting your first budget highlights to this House. Honorable members, I wish to thank the Cabinet Secretary for the National Treasury and Economic Planning for ably making a public pronouncement of the budget policy highlights and the revenue-raising measures for the national government for the financial year 2025-2026 and the medium term. I confirm that in conformity with the provisions of Section 39 and 39A of the Public Finance Management Act, Cap 412A, and the Standing Order 244C, the Cabinet Secretary had already submitted to the National Assembly the relevant legislative proposals necessary to actualize the revenue-raising measures to finance the 2025-2026 budget. This has since culminated in the Finance Bill 2025, which is under consideration by this House. Honorable members, it is my pleasure to invite all members, the Cabinet Secretary for the National Treasury and Economic Planning, other Cabinet Secretaries, and all invited guests to a reception at the Parliamentary Courtyard. Honorable members, the time now being 5:23 p.m., this House stands adjourned until Tuesday, 17th June 2025 at 2:30 p.m. I thank you.
Mwiroreri kuu ni kuria cikaro-ini cia mbunge ya bururi kuria minista wa maundu megie kigina mundu ugwitwo Mbadi akorwo akirikia gukorwo agitariria mahuthiro ma thirikari kana mahuthiro ma bururi ma mwaka wa 2025 mwaka wa 2026 kuria akorwo agitemania mahuthiro kuringana na maundu ma bata maria thirikari igukorwo ikirongoreria maundu-ini matiganite ni maingi akorwo agitariria hamwe namo megie mogaruruku maria arendekithia maundu-ini matiganite nigetha gutigirira ati bururi ni wakorwo ukihota kwirugamirira hari ungania wa kigina hamwe na gukorwo igithinga mahoro megie uhuthiri wa mbeca cia thirikari. Ningi minister no akorwo agitariria uhoro wegie honge cia bata iria thirikari ya Kenya Kwanza ikoretwo igitariria ta ituge cia bata cia thirikari ino, na akorwo agitariria kuria thirikari irikoragwo ikirongoreria guhuthira nyingi cia mbeca ciacio. Ni akorwo agitariria uhoro wegie honge itiganite o kuma ruhonge rwa ngirigaca, kuma ruhonge rwa ugima wa mwiri, kuma ruhonge rwa uhoro wegie wonjoria na maundu megie iganda, o undu umwe na maundu megie weigithia, maundu megie kurumbuia maria maturigiceirie, na maya mothe ni hari gutigirira ati kugerera honge itiganite iria bururi ukoragwo ukihoka hari ukuria wa bururi ni ciakorwo cikigairwo mbeca iria cingigiteithiriria honge icio gukorwo cigikura. Na makiria minister ni akorwo agitariria uhoro wegie uria bururi ugukorwo ukihota kungania mbeca iria ciagirirwo gukorwo cikihuthika thiini wa mwaka turorete wa kigina, na hari budgeti ino turakorwo tukirongoreria ya trilioni 4.2. Minister Mbadi ni akorwo agitariria ati ni kuri na ihoro ria ciringi bilioni 923 iria cigukorwo cikiunganio na njira itiganite, no wa mwanya makiria ni ati hari ici bilioni 287 cigukorwo ciri ngombo iria cigukorwo cikikombwo kuma nja wa bururi, no gicunje kia bilioni 635.5 cigukorwo cigikombwo kuma guku bururi-ini, na giki mwiroreri ni gicunje kia 3.3 kia utonga wa bururi. Na ningi ririkana oria thirikari irakorwo igikomba mbeca nyingi kuma guku bururi-ini gukira nja wa bururi, nego kiuga ati onjoria kana andu aria makoragwo makihoka gukomba mbeca kuma guku bururi-ini ni megugekora hatikaini hanini, tondu honge iria ikoragwo cigikombithia mbeca cigukorwo cigitengera muno makiria gukorwo cigikombithia thirikari gukira onjoria, tondu ni cigugikorwo cikihoka thirikari ni igukorwo na uhuthu gukorwo ikimariha gukira uria ingikorwo ikihoka onjoria kana aigithia gukorwo makiriha aria makomba guku bururi-ini. Na hari maundu maria minister akorwo agitariria kuri na honge iria thirikari ya Kenya Kwanza ikoretwo igitariria ta ituge cia bata cia ukuria wa bururi, na hamwe na cio ni uhoro wegie urimi, ni uhoro wegie biacara nini, ni hari uhoro wegie waki wa nyumba, na uyu ni uria president akoretwo agikirira na njira nene. Ciumia cigana na hituku ni tuonete president akiruguria uhoro wegie kuheana nyumba kuri andu matiganite. Nyumba ici ni iria cirikite gwakwo rungu rwa mubango uyu wa waki wa nyumba na thogora wa thi. President agitariria ati uyu ni mubango wa gutigirira andu aria matehotete ni makorwo makiheo nyumba cire na gitio, ni makorwo makiheo na nyumba ciramaigithia gikiro kiege iguru gukira hihi aria maikaraga nyumba cia ibanda kana kuria icagi-ini cia tauni. Na ningi minister no akorwo agitariria ati gitugi kingi gia bata gia thirikari ino iria kirarongoreria na njira ya mwanya ni uhoro wegie ugima wa mwiri. Ruhonge ruru rwa ugima wa mwiri rukoretwo rugithiira mogaruruku matiganite. Mwiroreri, ririkana ni tukoretwo tukiuma mutaratara-ini uria wana haria kabere wegie marihi ma thibitari wa NHIF, na thaici turathie na mbere na gukinyaniria mubango wa SHA. Nitugugikorwo tugigutariria ruhonge ta ruru rugairwo mbeca cigana atia, na ruhonge rwa mwisho na rwa bata ruria thirikari irakorwo igitanya ati ni ikwibeibia kigina kiria yunganagia kuma ruhonge ruru ni ruhonge rwegie ũhũthĩri wa mĩtambo ya ũkinyanĩria. Rũrũ nĩ rũhonge makĩria rũingĩrĩirwo nĩ andũ ethĩ, rũhonge rũrateithĩrĩria ona andũ arĩa matarĩ na mawĩra ma mawabici makorwo makĩhota kwĩyandĩka mawĩra na njĩra itiganĩte, njĩra ciĩgiĩ gũthondeka thenema, njĩra ciĩgiĩ gũkorwo makĩendia indo na njĩra ya nenda-inĩ. Na nĩ ũmwe wa maũndũ marĩa thirikari ĩno ya Kenya Kwanza ĩrakorwo ĩkĩgeria gũtigĩrĩra atĩ makĩria ũhoro wĩgiĩ ũngania wa magoti, atĩ nĩ yakorwo ĩkĩrora rũhonge rũu tondũ kwa ihinda rũtigĩkoretwo rũgĩcangĩra harĩ kĩondo kĩa ũngania wa magoti, ona thengia wa rũhonge rũrũ gũkorwo hihi rũgĩkĩũngania mabirioni ma mbeca. Na mwĩroreri, ta rĩu tũkĩrora ũhoro wĩgiĩ ũrĩmi, rũrũ nĩ rũhonge rũkoragwo rũgĩcangĩra na njĩra nene makĩria ũhoro wĩgiĩ ũtonga wa bũrũri, na gĩcunjĩ kĩnene makĩria kĩa Akenya na makĩria kũrĩa matũra-inĩ gĩgakorwo gĩkĩhoka rũhonge rũrũ rwa ũrĩmi rwa gũteithĩrĩria gũkorwo makĩhingia mabataro mao ma o mũthenya. No na andũ arĩa matarĩ mataũni-inĩ no magĩkoragwo makĩhoka rũhonge rũrũ tondũ no nginyagia makorwo makĩhoka rũhonge rũrũ na njĩra ya gũkĩrĩa. Na rũhonge rũrũ kũringana na minister nĩ atarĩrie maũndũ matiganĩte kana honge itiganĩte iria cirĩ rungu rwa rũhonge rũrũ rwa ũrĩmi, iria cigũkorwo cikĩheo kana ũrĩa cigũkorwo cikĩgaĩrwo mbeca, na nĩ akorwo agĩtarĩria atĩ ciratanya gũkorwo rũhonge rũrũ rũratanya gũkorwo rũkĩheo ciringi birioni 87.6, na agĩtarĩria hamwe na honge iria cirongoreirio nĩ ũhoro wĩgiĩ ũheani wa bataraitha na thogora wa thĩ. Rũhonge rũrũ rũhetwo mũigana wa ciringi birioni 8. No ririkana mwĩroreri, nĩ rũhonge kana nĩ rũhonge rũkoretwo rũkĩgĩa na nganja tondũ miaka mĩhĩtũku nĩ tuonete ũhoro ũyũ wĩgiĩ ũheani wa bataraitha na thogora wa thĩ ũgĩkungio wara kana ũgĩkorwo ũkĩhakwo ndoro na njĩra itiganĩte. Nĩ tuonire hĩndĩ Mithika Linturi arĩ minister wa ũrĩmi gũgĩtuĩka atĩ nĩ kwarĩ na ũheani wa bataraitha ya ngungo kana bataraitha ya mathara kana bataraitha ĩtakinyanĩirie ikĩro, na ũũ nĩ kuga harĩ mbeca iria rũhonge rũrũ rũgaĩirwo kũrĩ na mbeca cirora cigĩtanywo atĩ cigũkorwo cigĩteithia arĩmi na njĩra ya arĩmi gũkorwo makĩheo bataraitha ĩtakinyanĩirie ikĩro. Na rita rĩrĩ mwĩroreri, rũhonge rũrũ rũgũtanywo gũkorwo rũkĩamũkĩra kĩgĩna gĩa ciringi birioni 8 nĩgetha mũrĩmi akorwo akĩamũkĩra bataraitha na thogora wa thĩ, na nĩgetha akorwo akĩhota kwĩmbaimbia magetha make. Nĩ maũndũ matiganĩte matarĩirio thĩinĩ wa rũhonge rũrũ rwa ũrĩmi. Kũrĩ na maũndũ megiĩ ũrĩmi wa thamaki na maũndũ matiganĩte ma kũrũmbũiya andũ arĩa makoragwo makĩhoka ũtonga wa kũrĩa iria-inĩ, nacio magakorwo makĩheo mũigana wa ciringi birioni 5.2. Ici nĩ mbeca iria cigũkorwo cigĩteithia makĩria andũ arĩa tũkiuge makoragwo na kũrĩa gĩcũa-inĩ, andũ arĩa makoragwo na kũrĩa kaunti ta cia Kisumu, arĩa makoragwo marigicĩirie iria rĩa Victoria, na aya nĩ arĩa makoragwo makĩhoka makĩria ũtegi wa thamaki arĩ ta mwĩhoko wao kana arĩ ta umatho wao wa o mũthenya. Tũgĩthiĩ na mbere, ningĩ kũrĩ na ũhoro wĩgiĩ kũrũmbũiya arĩithi mahiũ aya makĩria nĩ arĩa makoragwo kũrĩa rũgongo rwa bũrũri, na tabarĩra itiganĩte cia gũkorwo rũhonge rũrũ rũkĩrũngwo. Rũhonge rũrũ rũgĩkorwo kũrũmbũiyo na makĩria aya nĩ andũ arĩa makoragwo makĩhutio na njĩra nene nĩ hĩndĩ ĩrĩa gwakorwo na riũa inene rĩa ihinda iraya, na mahiũ mao magakorwo nĩ morĩra kumana na ng'aragu. Na rũhonge rũrũ rwa ũhoro wa ũrĩithi na tabarĩra cia gũkorwo atĩ nĩ mateithĩka gũkorwo makĩgunĩka na ũrĩithi wa mahiũ rũhetwo ciringi birioni 1.6. Ningĩ kũrĩ na ũhoro wa gũtigĩrĩra atĩ ona hĩndĩ ĩrĩa kũrĩ na riũa inene, ona hĩndĩ ĩrĩa kũrĩ na hathara ĩrĩa yakorwo ĩgĩcũngĩrĩria bũrũri kwaga irio cia kũigana, atĩ bũrũri nĩ wĩharĩrĩirie wega, ũrĩ na kĩondo kĩiganu gĩa gũkorwo ũkĩhe bũrũri kana ũkĩhe mũingĩ irio cia kũigana. Na ha minister atĩtĩrithia atĩ muoroto nĩ gũkorwo tũgĩtigĩrĩra atĩ nĩ twanyihia mũigana wa irio iria tũgũraga kuma mabũrũri ma nanja hĩndĩ ĩrĩa tũrĩ na thĩna ũcio wa kwaga irio cia kũigana kuigana kumana na mathina matiganite. Kuri na hindi ya irio cithukagio ni undu wa riũa inene, kuri na hindi gukoragwo gukiumira mathina matiganite. Tariu kuri na hindi kwari na thina wa itono gukorwo cikigumira migunda na njira nene. Nitukoragwo na hindi kugiaga na mbura nene